Good morning. Welcome to the Rare Books Room of the Alexander Hamilton Memorial Free Library. My name is Terry Scott, and I'm here with your next installment of Oddities, Authors, and Stories. Today we're going to visit with you about Edgar Allan Poe. Look at that. April is regarded as National Poetry Month. Probably one of the most renowned American poets is Edgar Allan Poe. The works of Poe helped innovate the modern detective story, inspire fascination with horror stories, and his writings have inspired the likes of authors like H.G. Wells, Stephen King. Even Alfred Hitchcock has named him as a major influence in how he directed his suspense thrillers. He may be remembered as a troubled man who poured his heart into his stories, but Poe briefly served in the military before all that began. Born in Boston on January 19, 1809, Poe's father abandoned him and his family in 1810, when Edgar was very young. 1 year later, his mother died of consumption, the same disease that would later take his wife, Virginia Clem. Upon his mother's death, Edgar Poe was taken in by John Allan. John Allan was a merchant, successful merchant, in Richmond, Virginia. Allan raised him like a son, but grew tired of the gambling and lack of ambition after Edgar dropped out of the University of Virginia. Edgar knew he wasn't welcome at the Allan house anymore via letters from his foster father. So he decided to enlist in the U.S. Army after he realized he couldn't support himself taking odd jobs in Boston. When Poe registered in the U.S. Army in May 1827, he registered under the name Edgar A. Perry and claimed he was 22, when in reality he was 18. He had served for 2 years in the 1st Artillery Regiment. His unit was posted in Charleston, South Carolina, where he was promoted to artificer who helped prepare shells for artillery. He was soon promoted to Sergeant Major, which is the highest rank a non-commissioned officer could achieve. Before he decided to leave his post, before the 5-year enlistment requirement was up, Poe felt he served as long as suits my ends or my inclination. He revealed his identity and circumstances to his commanding officer, who said that yes, Poe could leave on the condition he reconciled with John Allan. Allan refused to reconcile and ignored his foster son's pleas. But when his wife Frances Allan died, John Allan may have shown compassion, as he wrote to Poe in Poe's favor so he could be discharged to receive an appointment at West Point. He was officially discharged on April 15, 1829. A year later, he began studies at the West Point Military Academy in New York. However, he was expelled for disobedience of orders and gross neglect of duty not long after he arrived. This was intentional, as he was angry at Allan for disinheriting him. He retaliated by skipping classes, missing mandatory formations. Some stories claim he would walk the grounds drunk, and on days he actually showed up at formations, he was naked. He duped some of his fellow classmates into giving him $170 to publish his poetry, under the ruse that he was actually writing poems poking fun at the instructors, only to have them be republished older poems that he had written during military service. The classmates weren't too happy and threw those copies into the Hudson River. After he left, he started dedicating more of his life to writing stories and poems. This made him one of the first American writers to make a living through only writing. While he did achieve some acclaim in his lifetime, mainly for The Raven, he was never able to financially make ends meet. Poe would die under mysterious circumstances in the streets of Baltimore on October 7, 1849. Now, similar to his poetry, both the life and death of Edgar Allan Poe are tinged with darkness and peppered with inexplicable oddities. Even the site of his burial is known for several peculiar incidents which occurred in the years following his death. It is for this reason that the Edgar Allan Poe gravesite is one of the most well-loved attractions you'll find in Baltimore. The saga of Edgar Allan Poe's grave is convoluted, to say the least. After his death in 1849, Poe was buried in an unmarked grave at the Westminster Presbyterian Church in West Baltimore. 11 years later, when the site had all but disappeared from a lack of upkeep, it was finally marked with a small piece of sandstone carved with the number 80. It's unclear whether that number had any significance to Poe's gravesite, and if so, what it might have been. In the end, though, it didn't matter. As the people of Baltimore learned about the minuscule stone marking the final resting place of their beloved Poe, pressure built to create a memorial that better reflected what he meant to the city. In 1860, Edgar Allan Poe's cousin ordered a proper marble headstone to mark his grave. However, that headstone was destroyed in a freak train accident while it was being fabricated. A replacement was never ordered, leaving the lackluster sandstone slab as Poe's official tombstone for another 15 years. A monument to mark Poe's gravesite was completed in 1874, but its engraving included an error that was never corrected. Poe's birth date is listed on the stone as January 20th instead of the 19th. The reason for this oversight remains a mystery today. In addition to the date mix-up, the memorial was too big to fit in the space above the grave. So Poe's grave was moved. His body was exhumed and reburied beneath the memorial elsewhere in the church graveyard. Needless to say, the story of Edgar Allan Poe's tombstone lives on as a favorite piece of Baltimore history. So that's just a little bit about Poe. His military career was interesting to say the least, as well as his burial. Not many have two burial sites. So Edgar Allan Poe was definitely different, but some of his works were just amazing. For instance, here we have the complete tales and poems of Edgar Allan Poe. We have several books, a few books on Edgar Allan Poe and his poetry here at Alexander Hamilton Memorial Free Library. We hope you come in and check them out. And stay tuned, because next month, the first Wednesday, we're going to have another Oddities, Authors and Stories. And I hope you enjoyed today's story. Again, thank you to Jessica Brown for doing the research behind this and writing it. And we hope to see you next time. Have a wonderful day.